And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 3, episode number 38. Before we get rolling, I just want to give a quick plug and shout out. Great new D3 Datacast episode yesterday with Mike Rainiak, the head coach and general manager of We Are D3 TBT. Check that one out. There's some awesome content coming out from the D3 Datacast guys, including some D3 players, some trading cards, I should say. Fun stuff, but definitely check out the Mike Rainiak interview. That's the confluence of some good people there. I'm excited here on QCast episode 38 of season 3 to have a brand new Division 3 men's basketball head coach. And I'm excited to welcome JT Gritzmacher, the brand new head coach of the Wisconsin Lacrosse Eagles. JT, boy, you must be fired up. It's great to see you and welcome to the QCast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I think fired up is probably an understatement. I'm super excited to get going. Just like we kind of were talking before the show started, I'm still running around trying to get some things in place for the move and everything like that. But I mean, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Let's but before we get into background and talk about lacrosse and all of that, where I thought we might start, JT, there's a lot of people that'll watch this that are young coaches, assistant coaches, people looking to get the kind of opportunity you've just been given. And I want to talk about how you get yourself in position. You know, you did a lot of really great things to make yourself competitive for that lacrosse job. And when the opportunity came up, you jumped up and got it. Talk a second, if you would, JT, to some of the aspiring Division 3 head coaches. What are some things they need to be working on and focused on to get ready for a big time opportunity like this one?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think for me, right, I started as a student manager at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So coming out of high school, I was very average high school basketball player, maybe a little above average. So I had some opportunities, but I just knew I wanted to get into coaching. So I kind of that was my path. I knew that wanted to be a manager, and I knew I wanted to be a manager at a Division 1 school and just try to start relationships. So I made a lot of relationships with camps and doing a lot of AAU stuff, different things when I was young, when I was in college, and basically my whole summer was just either at an AAU tournament or at a camp. So I was just doing anything I could to build those relationships. And really, to be honest, just continuing those relationships. And then I caught a break. Actually, I went to Wisconsin Whitewater as a student assistant and was able to get on there with Coach Miller. And he really kind of let me just have the reins of recruiting and doing a lot of different things. So I built some more relationships, and I got a break when I got to go be a grad assistant at Longwood University. And just same thing, just continue to build relationships there. And my roommate there was a guy by the name of Andy Farrell, and he actually started Rising Coaches Association, which is kind of a big association for young coaches that were basically in the same spot as me. So that created some more relationships and really just building off of those. And then just always being ready. I think I got lucky with some stuff. I think you get lucky sometimes the timing of jobs and different things like that. So probably the Brian Stratton job, I think I got a little lucky with the fact that it was my second interview there. And I interviewed the year before and didn't get it. So I kind of was able to lay a good seed when I got that second interview. But that job then led me to the next job, and beat the lacrosse job being a little bit later, I guess, in the cycling hiring season, I think was huge. But the biggest thing I would say is just to be ready. I was always ready for every opportunity that I had coming in, but I was still in the spot where I was at. I wasn't really looking ahead to another job. I was just really focused on being the best I could be at wherever I was at. And then when an opportunity came, I made sure I took full advantage of it.
Talk a little bit, if you would, building on that the kind of the interview process, because it's one thing to get yourself ready and have the background and kind of feel ready. But, you know, you get into these processes where any head coach opening is going to attract a great field of people. You add on to that a conference like the WIAC. Any WIAC opening, you're going to have some current head coaches. You're going to have the best of the best assistant coaches. I'm just curious, any tips from you once you get into the actual interview process? And let's say you're in a top 5 or a top 3. Are there some things you feel strongly about that you would recommend to others who end up in that same position?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just being yourself. I think that sometimes when you get in those positions, you get in front of the people you want to try to prove that you're somebody, or try to, be bigger than maybe you really are. And you got to realize that on paper, that's what got you in that spot, is who you
Right.
are. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just being yourself. But then on top of that, I did a lot of research. You kind of try to figure out who's on the committee, right? And then you figure out, okay, what's their background? All right, is there somebody maybe that I know through those people? Um, at lacrosse, there really wasn't anybody, which is crazy. Like, usually there's some type of
Right.
connection. There was nobody, but I really just tried to find their background, seeing what they, different things that, all right, how does what I like as a program or coach relate to maybe what the baseball coach did or what the football coach did, and just try to really show them who you are, and then show them that you did your research, because I think that shows the preparedness. It kind of shows like that's going to be the same way as a coach, same way with your program, those things. But for me, it was just 100% just really just being who I am. And then when you get, my biggest goal always in interviews is to get to that on-campus interview. And when you get there, to me, if you don't get the job, it probably wasn't supposed to be, because at the end of the day, when you get to that point, it's almost them trying to figure out, okay, we're finalizing this guy or finalizing that guy, and just kind of see who you are as a person. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just be who you are, and be patient. I think it's, I mean, I can say this now, there was jobs along the way that maybe I couldn't even get an interview at, or I did get an interview and didn't get the next interview, and you just kind of wonder, like, man, why couldn't I get that one? And then it all makes sense at the end when you kind of land to the place you want to be at all along.
That's great advice. I think it applies whether we're talking about basketball coaching jobs or jobs in the corporate world. I think your advice is spot on, and I think it's very helpful. Um, you're coming from Bryan and Stratton, which was a junior college where you did extremely well, 59 and 30 over that span, and you won 26 games in your last year. When the lacrosse job opened, so when Kent Dernbach left for Stevens Point, and you knew it was open, was it a really quick, hey, I need to be all over that job, or was this something you had to dig into? Talk about the decision to pursue the lacrosse job.
Yeah, no, that I think the first thing is, I said something to my wife. So I kind of mentioned to her that the job is open. We have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. So that's always been big in a lot of things I do. And that's why the Brian Strand job was, for me, a great move, because I'm from here. I'm from Milwaukee. So to be
Right.
back home and kind of being that was huge. So then, but we kind of knew it was ready for the next step in just kind of life and career and those things. So I said something to her. Obviously, I got to get her blessing, and she was all on board with it. So then um, I reached out, just kind of sent the emails, the same thing probably everybody does, and you don't really get a response. But that's when I kind of just went in full attack mode. I just started doing my research and made sure I got my application in right away, and just kind of reached out and circled back to different people and seeing what they might hear, because a lot of times with these jobs, and an assistant, especially the good ones, the next guy up is that assistant or whoever. And this was a kind of different situation with Coach Finkel going to Ripon College before Coach Dernbach
Right.
left. And he was in a very good situation where he wasn't going to leave and come back. So it was almost wide open. Like, it wasn't something that they had, okay, here's our backup plan when Coach Dernbach leaves. So knowing that really gave me more confidence. Like, okay, if I do everything I can, I think I can have a shot at this job. And a lot of times, there's most jobs, there's almost somebody already in mind, and I don't think that was the case here. So kind of just went full court press on it. And it can be an anxious process, because they drag out sometimes, and you have an interview and you might not hear something for another week, and then same thing, then this goes on for a month and a half. So
Right.
sometimes the anxiety gets a little high, but it was the same thing. I just kind of, I've got to a point where I just told myself, if this is something that happens, I think it's supposed to happen. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I mean, I was very blessed and fortunate for it to happen.
You're no stranger to the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, as you mentioned, you grew up in kind of the outskirts of Milwaukee, and you had two different stints at Whitewater. First of all, you went to Whitewater. You were a student manager, and then you were also an assistant coach. So kind of two different stints at Whitewater. Went to school there. Your overall impressions, JT, of the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. It is, every year there might be a league that ends up better that given year. Last year, maybe the UAA was the best league. There's years where the CCIW might be, or the NESCAC. But overall, in the history of Division III. The WIAC is the biggie. It's the best conference. What are your impressions of the league just walking into this whole crazy?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think it's loaded every year. I think that there's a lot of sports, right, in every division where there might be a top heavy 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, and then it kind of bottoms off. But not in the WIAC for basketball. I think anybody can beat anybody, which is huge. And then I think anybody can win the league any year. And I think that's just because of a lot of the talent in the state of Wisconsin basketball wise, right? So there's one Division II school in Parkside,
Right.
and then we have three Division I schools. Junior college is kind of taking that next step of coming up, but after that, I mean, even when I grew up, if you don't go play at Milwaukee or Green Bay or Wisconsin or Marquette, or Marquette, then like, okay, if I can get a Division III for one of these WIAC schools, that's the next best step if Parkside doesn't offer whatever. So I think knowing that, like, there's just so much talent in that league. And even when I was at Whitewater, I mean, we had a lot of talent. And I tell guys now all the time. I mean, we had guys that, had long overseas careers or had played in the G League for a little bit, different things like that, because the talent's that high. And when you can play in a league, I mean, the coaches, if you look at the coaches that have come out of this league and where they've went, I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a challenge. And I think the biggest challenge kind of hit when our schedule's kind of tentative right now. We're figuring some things out, but our conference schedule is basically set. And I think I was looking at the end, and I think right before the tournament, it's like Oshkosh, Whitewater, Eau Claire, or something like that. And I was like, it's either going to be a great ride into the tournament, or we got to fix some things. So just kind of seeing those little things, and every night's going to be a challenge.
You have unique perspective on the state of Wisconsin basketball, and I'm just curious as your thoughts on what makes it such a hotbed for hoops, because population wise, Wisconsin is nowhere near some of these monster states like Texas and Florida and New York. But it turns out, especially at the Division III level, I mean, the amount of kids that end up in the WIAC playing for WIAC teams being great players is unbelievable. I mean, per capita, it's just ridiculous. Certainly there's some kids at the WIAC that come from like the Chicago area, other parts of Illinois and Minnesota. But JT, what is it that makes Wisconsin such an awesome basketball state?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, just with the WIAC is, I mean, the schools too, right? So like the athletic side is really good, but when you go through any of the UW system schools, I mean, you're talking about some of the top academic institutions in the country, really. So I think that's obviously very intriguing for families and for players knowing that. And then I think the development has gotten so much better at the young levels. There's a lot of times there's a lot of AAU teams, and some of them sometimes it's a crapshoot on who's good and who's not. But I think in the Milwaukee area, Madison area, Fox Valley, Green Bay area, like there's a lot of high level AAU teams where they do a lot of really good development, and they got the right coaches running, whether they were WIAC graduates or whatever, that they're telling kids, like, it's not D1 or bust, it's not D2 or it's not a scholarship or bust. You got to go to a place where you want to be, where you have a fit, and where you can really make the most of your situation. And I think with that, it's helping a lot of kids maybe not go a level higher than they should, or go a route they shouldn't go, and kind of staying in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that it's different, I guess, as me being a Wisconsin born and raised, as when you come up as a kid, like that's what you hear about is WIAC basketball,
right?
Wisconsin basketball, Marquette basketball, so knowing if you could play at one of those levels, like it's to most kids, like that's still your Duke or North Carolina, you know what I mean, when it comes to playing at a school. So I think that's the biggest thing, but I think the development's got so much better with different AU programs and the ways. I mean, the high school coaches in Wisconsin are some of the best coaches in the country too.
Right.
I mean, and I think that's huge.
It's a great point. I mean, I think high school kids in Wisconsin have such a favorable opinion of Division III, and it's just the same in Illinois from my experiences. If you're a high school kid in suburban Chicago, let's say, I mean, you have a really good impression of going to play at Augustana or Illinois Wesleyan or Wheaton or North Central, et cetera. I know in Wisconsin it's that way. Kids look at those Division III opportunities as great opportunities, whereas I think there's other parts of the country, even parts of the country with a lot of Division III schools, where kids look at it as they kind of thumb their nose at it, right? As they don't look at it like a great opportunity. So Wisconsin certainly is one of just the hotbed states of Division III men's and
Yep.
women's basketball. Wanted to ask about what kind of style you're looking to bring from what I've seen in the past and kind of going back and researching your style and your history. Um, I know that defense is important to you. I know that pace is important and playing fast. Um, what do you plan to bring to lacrosse? What kind of style can we expect once you get things rolling?
Yeah, no, I think defense is number one with us. I think that's just kind of the way we build the program. I know me growing up in high school sports and throughout sports my life. I mean, I was a 5'9", 5'10" basketball player, so I knew to get on the court, like I had to play very hard and guard people. So that's kind of the same mantra we bring over here. But that's going to lead to our offense. We want to play with pace. We want to try to get out and play fast. A lot of different things we do in practice. We do a lot of 8-second shot clocks in transition drills, and trying to get the best shot in 8 seconds. We want to play when we play a regular practice. I mean, we put the shot clock on reset to about 20-24 seconds each time, and that's just to create our pace, and we want to develop open shots. I think I'm a big believer. Obviously, the game has changed a lot, but I'm a big believer that teams are so good that we really do want to get our first open shot, because in a possession we might not get another one if you're
Right.
playing against really good teams. So that's hard sometimes as a coach, because it's like, oh, you know what, maybe that wasn't the shot, the best shot, but it was the first open shot we could get. And I think if you play like that over time, it works out for us. And we want to get a lot of paint touches, and that's kind of how we want to live, is at the paint, at the rim, free throw line, and catch and shoot threes. I think with a lot of the personnel we have coming back this year, we'll be able to play a lot like that. I mean, we'll still have to play to some of our strengths. I think Austin Westra is probably, and JJ Pater are two of the better bigs in Division III basketball. So we got to make sure we play through our strengths. And that might mean some of the things are a little different, but for the most part, I also think that they can fit into how we're trying to play and what we're trying to do. But I think just be it playing hard. And I think when we play hard, everything else is going to come to it. I want to give guys a lot of freedom on offense. And that's based off our defense, right? So like if we can't guard people, I can't really give you freedom, because if we're giving up every possession, we're giving up a basket, then we're playing this fast freedom basketball. We're not making any shots, let's say, to start the game. We're gonna be down 14, 16 nothing right off the jump. So we got to make sure we guard people first, and that kind of gives us that opportunity to play free. And that's something that I think I take pride in over the years. Like we play fast, but our turnovers are still pretty low. So we don't play stupid. We play fast and try to play at that pace, and we kind of all know what we're supposed to do.
You led right into kind of where I wanted to go next, which is returning players. It in this day and age of the extra COVID year, so the fifth COVID year, and then the transfer portal, it's very difficult to look at a 2022-23 roster and figure out if someone is done or not done. And so let me just kind of go through. I'm 99.9% sure that Ethan Anderson, that the year he just played was his fifth year, right? So Ethan Anderson,
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
who is an
Yep.
All-American player
Yep.
and a sensational player, is done. And I know he played through a lot of injuries this past year and grinded that out and was still a great player for lacrosse. You mentioned Austin Westra, a 6'6" forward. It sounds like he is returning to your team this coming year. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's actually on campus now taking his master's classes, and he'll be back. So that was huge. And to be honest with you, I was in the same boat as I was looking at this job. I think I was watching a lot of film, and I skipped over Austin at first because I was reading, okay, he's gone, and then I found out he was coming back. I mean, that was a huge boost for us. But yeah, he'll be back, and I'm really excited about him coming back.
Yeah, that's to have a 6'6" forward coming back. He averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. It's like an all WIAC player just coming back to kind of anchor your team. We talked about Ethan Anderson being gone. There was another senior, Craig Steele, 6'3" junior. I don't know if Craig returns or if he has graduated and moved on.
Yeah, he actually, I'm not sure if he posted, but he actually graduated, and he's going to be grad transferring, I believe, to St. Cloud State, actually, I believe. So
That's right.
Yeah, so and he actually is pretty cool. He was one of the first people to reach out to me, and I've never met him, talked to him, and I think wants to be very involved. So I think that's been something that, as I've got this job too, I've I've learned is I think Coach Sternbach's an unreal coach, and I think he's recruited high level character people, not just basketball players. And I could tell that right from getting this job, because the support and the guys reaching out that used to play here, I mean, that's not something I really had before from other schools. So I
Right.
mean, that was really exciting.
And I won't go through all the rest of the players, but you certainly have an anchor in Austin Westra, and then some other returning guys who are very talented, who are kind of waiting, maybe lower minutes or no minutes, but are ready to jump in. You mentioned Kent Dernbach. This isn't a situation where you're taking over a failed program.
Yeah.
The last
Yeah.
5 years, 99-46, and NCAA tournament, 3 of the last 4 completed seasons. So that what I'll call the Ethan Anderson era was amazing for Coach Dernbach. So what's the mentality, JT? You're coming into this thing. Sometimes you take over a program that's won, 4 games or something, and you're taking over a program that has been in the top 25 poll for several years now. What's the mentality as you try to keep it going and build it from there?
Yeah, no, I think, and then on top of that, he doesn't leave the league, and now we have
Yeah,
to
you got to
go
play
and try
against
to
them.
beat. Yeah, now we got
Right.
to make sure we can try to beat him, right? So I think for me, it's just like I try not to look at those things as much, because I think sometimes, you can look at those things that can change how you think or how you develop your program. But I can't, and I told this to our players, like I don't know how Coach Dernbach coached. I don't know his things, but I can't look and do things how he did them, but I can only do them how I do them. And my biggest thing is I'm big in growth, and that's kind of a core value we have as a program and something we talk about. So the way we do things is just A to Z. So like we know there's steps, and it's very cliche, but like we're not going to try to skip the steps. And sometimes that means you might lose a couple games in a row, and what people want to do is, okay, the house is on fire, we got to do all this stuff. No, we're going to keep doing what we do and get to where we're supposed to be by the end of the year. And if you do that right, I think you take the right steps. So for me, I think that there's an excitement too from just the guys and from just even like the program, the school, the community, like not having a new face, but something new, like kind of an unknown. And I think that's kind of something exciting for me, is knowing that, okay, these guys are bought in. I think every player that was able to come back came back. So I take a lot of pride in that, knowing that they believe in me and that they believe in where we're going to go. So I think the biggest thing for me is just trying to kind of continuing it. I think when you get the brand is high, right? So what Coach Dernbach did is he already put the brand up to a spot where when people say lacrosse, they know what it means. And I don't have to build that brand. I just have to make sure that we get our basketball program right. And I think that's the biggest thing from even when I took the junior college job I was at, the brand wasn't really there. So on top of everything, you're trying to get the brand out. You're trying to make sure recruits know those things. So I think it's exciting. It's a little different for me, because the last job I was at we kind of had to rebuild. First year was COVID year. I think we played like 18 or 19 games, things like that. So it's a different setting, but it's made it a lot easier in the transition, because I don't have to recruit as much for this upcoming season. I can focus on 2024 kids. We might fill in couple spots here and there for this class, but we can focus on the next class, can focus on some other things and make sure we're all ready to go day one. And I think that's the biggest thing. Just sorry for leading out, but the biggest thing I think is having those 8 days now that you can have in Division III, whether before or after. And we're going to use them all before, just because, I mean, we're going to put in brand new stuff. It's going to be a whole new program. So I think that's the biggest thing for us is to have those 8 practices so that they can see what our identity is going to be, our culture is going to be like on the court before day one officially starts.
I'm interested in your take, JT, on kind of recruiting to some of the different levels that you've been at. You've been at several levels, so you know how to recruit into the WIAC and the kind of kids that are at the sweet spot for the WIAC. Coming from a junior college, I think there's tons of misperceptions about junior college and who goes to junior college and why. Is it possible that in this job that you'll be recruiting many of the same kids that you were recruiting to Bryant and Stratton, or do you feel like at lacrosse it's like a totally different pool of players? I'm just interested in how you see that.
No, I think so. I think it's a mix. So we obviously recruited some kids at Bryant Stratton that maybe academics made them go junior college route, but the majority of the kids that we recruited, to be honest, were just maybe under recruited. out of high school, or I had the privilege of my second year or my third this past year actually. We had a lot of third year guys that had that COVID year, so like they kind of
Right.
were in limbo with nowhere to go because Division Ones, Division Twos all kind of kept their roster because everybody stayed that extra year. So we were able to be a little older with that way. But we kind of, to me, it's the same. It's gonna be a lot of the same. We have a very, I don't want to say strict, but our players got to fit what we're about. So we don't just recruit based on basketball players. And I've missed on a lot of kids because they might have been better basketball players, but I just didn't think they'd fit the culture that we have. And I think that the culture, I mean, it's going to be the same way at lacrosse, and accountability is a big standard of what we do. So if you can't be accountable for a lot of things, it's not going to work. So, and I think the kids that we like to find that fit the best with us are the guys who maybe are underlooked. Like, I think that if you got a little chip on your shoulder coming in, it helps you, and it helps the way we want to play, and it helps what we do. Like, I'd rather have a guy, I always say I'd rather have a guy who's just hungry to go get everything. And this is something I would tell our guys all the time is like, we want the guys who, when they grew up, maybe they going to McDonald's was a very big prize and reward to them, right? Like they thank mom, grandma, whoever took them to McDonald's, not the ones who was just probably kind of like how my son's right now. It's like, oh, McDonald's is what I expect to get once a week or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of guys we want to recruit, where like they know like
Right.
everything I get, I got work for. It's a privilege. I'm thankful, and we try to do that with making sure we find out what type of guys they are before just basketball players. So I guess to answer your question, a little bit of both. I think, and I also think that we have a really big opportunity here to maybe add some transfers as we're recruiting, because I think that's something that you don't see as much in the WIAC is maybe junior college transfers, but being at that level, like I know what kind of guys they are, and I know
Right.
that if they can make it through, their 2 years at the junior college, like they can really help you at the 4 year, and I'm looking forward to doing that as well.
You mentioned culture a few times. Obviously, that's key to building any program that you take over, inherit, et cetera. You mentioned accountability a few times. What are the other parts of the culture at Wisconsin lacrosse that you're looking to build?
Yeah, I think togetherness is our first thing. We talk about family, and that's just with relationships. That's with doing everything together. I don't. I just don't like selfish guys. I guess that's just not my thing. Is I want guys who are selfless. Like, I throw your ego out at the door. Like, when you walk in, you got to throw the ego out. And maybe that's because of my background in coaching, right? Like, I've done everything from sweeping floors to recruiting players to calling plays. Like, so I know that doing every job, like I expect all of us to do every job, coaches, players, like there's nothing above us, below us. And I think that when you got that on that same page with everybody, that's huge. And then the growth and accountability part to me is the two biggest things, because in accountability, I think that's something that, coaches talk about, players talk about, but it doesn't work unless it goes both ways. And I tell our guys that, like, they can hold us accountable. Like, if they think that, coaches, that maybe there's something like, hey, coach, we like this, but it's not really working with what we're doing, I'll listen to them. There's times I might not agree with them, but I'm going to listen to them, because I think that, there's everything looks good on a whiteboard as a coach when you draw it up. But if the players don't believe in it, if the players don't feel like it's something that works for them, it's not going to work. So I try to make sure our communication is like at an all time, a very high level, and do that different ways. Like, we have what we call a leadership council, and we'll have it here at lacrosse, where basically the team votes on 4 guys that they want to be captains or leaders. And then I meet with those guys once a week or once every couple of weeks, and they just kind of, they're kind of the heartbeat and the voice of the whole team. So like, if there's something that the team thinks is going on, they bring it to one of those guys, and then when we meet, we talk about it, just to make sure we're always on the same page. Because I think I've learned as an assistant, you're way more involved with the players. Like, even as a head coach, I'm involved with the players, but you're just way more involved naturally as an assistant. As a head coach, I've learned that I kind of can get a little caught up in, okay, the next game or this next scout. And sometimes it takes me away from knowing like what the heartbeat of the team is. So I like to make sure that leadership council kind of makes sure, okay, oh man, maybe I'm moving way too fast on what we're putting in, or maybe, hey, these guys need a little bit of a break. And I just believe in the players. I mean, they make us look good, right? So like, I want to make sure that they're feeling good about everything they're doing, and I want to make sure that we're always on the same page.
Your staff, remind me, you mentioned, obviously The lead assistant took the job at Ripon, and I can't remember who's staying behind that. So is your staff built and done, or are you still building your staff?
No, so we're still building. We still have another one spot to go on our staff, but we have Coach Kenny. He was with us, or was with the program the last couple of years, and then Coach Mike Mashik. He's been an assistant at the program as well. And I mean, they've been unreal for me, just kind of helping me with things and moving me along. And I think that's something that I'm so underrated to me, because the last job when I went to Brian Stratton, I mean, there was nobody there, so you're just kind of learning on the fly.
Right.
You don't really know how stuff was done, anything. And Coach Kenny, I mean, he's kind of been my right hand man through everything like this, and I'm just kind of taking the backseat to him right now. I mean, he got recruiting wise, he's got me on the players, and I think that was the first big. I think maybe for him it might have been the first big test. We were at an event a couple of weeks ago, and he kind of gave me a list of guys, and I came back to him. I was like, "You're on the right guys." And he's like, "All right, just want to make sure." Yeah, so like, he's unreal. Coach Mike too is unreal. Like he's brought a lot. So I think just having those guys around and seeing and hearing from them what it means, like to be at lacrosse and the vision that they have, is exciting. And then we'll still add one more. We'll have one more spot we'll add, and kind of going through that right now. But yeah, I mean, we got a couple guys coming back, and player wise, that's huge too. I think,
Yeah.
the play when there's new coaches at programs, it's Division 3 can be a little different than Division 1, because
Right.
a lot of times Division 1, like, guys might be younger and maybe they know their next goal is the pros or whatever, so they could transfer to a school and go. At Division 3, I mean, it's going to be academics first a lot of times. So we got a lot of juniors and seniors who have their degrees almost over, and they didn't. I never recruited them. They didn't get picked to be in this spot. So having a familiar face, I think, helps them, with the transition a little bit. And we've talked, like I've talked on the phone with a lot of the guys and Zoomed, and we've had like some Zoom meetings, but nothing really face to face. So I think it's just that maybe a little anxiety still from the team, and everybody just make it like till we get going. So having that middleman of those coaches is huge.
You mentioned Pat Miller. Just a couple more questions for you, and I know you're
You're
busy,
good.
but you mentioned Pat Miller, and you spent a couple stints with him at Whitewater. Pat just led his team to another Final Four appearance. Incredible team that returns most of their nucleus, so they're going to be. We'll talk about that in another show. Is like, how are you going to guard Miles Barnstable and the other Barnstable and the big game? Like, that's a whole nother show. But
Yeah,
what
I
will
don't
you
need that yet, but
right? You don't want to think about that yet, because that's a whole issue.
yeah.
But what will you take into your current head coaching role from what you learned from Pat Miller?
Yeah, I mean, I think basketball wise, a lot of stuff we still do practice and things like that is from him, or is from when I was at Whitewater. A lot of the different drills, just different things we do. But I think with Coach Miller off the court is where I learned so much more stuff. Like, I think my biggest thing is I knew I wanted to be a coach. So at 20, 21 years old, I mean, I was just in the office all the time. So I was without Coach probably ever knowing. Like, I was just watching what he does, watching how he did things. And the biggest thing I saw with him is, one is relationships with players. He can get on a kid and still love a kid, and they can know both of those things at the same time, which is hard for a lot of coaches to do. And then just the way he runs program. Like, I was always, when you work with different coaches, there's different ways guys do things, and you steal some things, steal different things. But with Coach Miller, I think the reason, people say like, oh man, they got really hot towards the end of the year, which is true, obviously, but that's all by design. Like, the way that they practice and the way that they run their program is, he's going to go hard, but he would make sure you have the rest that you need, like throughout that last month and a half practice. Like, practices aren't going to be as challenging as they were at the beginning, and it works. And it's shown it's worked, and that's kind of something I've stolen with our guys. And guys can get mad about that because maybe we're not going as long and they want to play a little more, but you got to make sure they're fresh. So I think just the way he is, the way he runs a program, professionalism, and then just seeing the way he interacts with all different people. I think that's another thing as a head coach, right? Like, as an assistant coach, you talk to maybe boosters, you talk to those guys, but it's different as the head coach. Like, you're all the time doing it. You're all the time making sure you're at fundraising events, different things like that, and seeing how he handled himself at that, and the way he was, and the way, I mean, I remember day one, first time I ever met him, he said, "You don't ever wear jeans to recruiting. You don't ever wear jeans to the office." And it's something I still do to this day. Like I don't, we'll have jeans day at school. I wear slacks or wear something else. So just little things like that that I learned from coach. And I mean, now same thing. It's just another guy like that you got to try to beat.
Right.
But and that I think that's the part about this league and this job is I think a coach told me, I can't remember who exactly it was, but someone told me if the job doesn't scare you or make you a little nervous, then it's not big enough. And I think that this job, like I don't want to say I'm scared or makes me nervous, but like you understand the pressure
Sure.
that you have at this job, and it makes you just what I mean. I think it makes you appreciate it that much more. And I mean, there's only what 8 or 9 of these in the state for a WIAC job. So to me, I mean that's the excitement I got, and I take a lot of pride. And I told our athletic director, I think I've told her plenty of times how thankful and grateful I am to have this opportunity, and I'm just excited to get going.
Well, on another show, we can talk about how to get into the tournament and SOS and RROs and all that stuff.
Yeah, yep.
I do think the one question for you related to that is scheduling. WIAC plays 14 conference games, and so that leaves you 11 non-conference games. Any thought to how you will eventually go about constructing your schedule? The types of programs you want to face, the level of
Yep.
difficulty, like what's your scheduling philosophy at a super like high level?
Yep. Yeah. So a lot of our schedule this year is kind of done, which was
Yeah.
nice by the time I got here. But going forward, like my schedule, and this is probably just maybe a fault of when I was at junior college, is we didn't have at-large bids in junior college. So
Right.
this year they do, but we didn't when I was there. So I was scheduling the best teams we could play because I wanted to make sure we were ready to go because it didn't matter, right, if we won or lost, but I want to make sure we're ready. That's the same way I'm gonna be here. Like I think I don't playing in the WIAC is such a tough league that I want to know who we are by the time we get there.
Right.
So if I put the schedule, and I don't want to say cupcakes, but let's say I put games where okay, we should win these games, and we get there and we're feeling good because we're 10-2 or whatever it is, and then we realize okay, we really aren't good at this or at that or at that, but we don't figure it out till the first game of the WIAC. Now it doesn't matter that we were 10-2. I'd rather figure out who we are because when we get to that league, like it comes at you right away. Like there's no off nights, there's no gimme games or anything like that. So I want to know who we are right away. And I think to do that, you got to play the best teams, and that's going in the CCIW, going on the road, going wherever really. And that's something that we'll do. And I want our team to know that. Like I want to have a confidence where we know like we can walk into places and win games that maybe we aren't supposed to win or whatever it is. But I think that that's built like through the program and different things. But yeah, I'm a big believer in playing the toughest teams. Like I'm a big believer in playing top scheduled teams, and then at the end of the year that's going to help obviously too. Like let's say we do slip up and you don't win the league or whatever, you don't win the tournament, and you need to get at large bid. Maybe that game on the road that you won down in Illinois comes back to help you out versus a home game you had versus somebody you're supposed to beat anyway. So yeah, so to me scheduling is, I mean, I think, and that helps you recruiting because I know every player I've talked to, they want to play. They ask you about their schedule. They do. Most players who have kind of know what's going on, they'll ask you like, "Hey, who are you guys playing?" And they want to play in those big games, right?
Sure.
And so I think that's huge. And it's better to tell me playing those big games than playing some of those other games that maybe aren't as big. So scheduling is going to be huge for me, and it's something I'm looking forward to putting together for next season.
And there's so many coaches now that are seeking out strong schedules, which is great. I think in the last 5 years, I've really seen huge emphasis on scheduling tough games. I think as the committee has made it really clear that strength of schedule is important, and having these wins over regionally ranked opponents is so important. The games you might play versus a top CCIW team or a UAA, whatever, those are such critical games. And so kudos
100%.
to you. That should be fun to see how that plays out. Folks, we've been talking to JT Gritzmacher, the new head men's basketball coach of the University of Wisconsin La Crosse Eagles. JT, you've been very kind with your time for a guy that's brand new, head spinning, still trying to put it together. I'll just say on my end, then I'm going to turn it to you to kind of close us out with any final thoughts. But congratulations, man. Like it's hard to get a WIAC head men's basketball or women's basketball job. It's difficult. It's competitive. Congratulations to you. Look forward to watching what you build. Looking forward to watching your team play this coming season. What would you like to leave with D3 fans, WIAC fans, Eagles fans as we close out the
Yeah,
QCast?
no, I appreciate it. I think it's kind of just first I'll go off what you said. I think it is extremely hard, and I mean I'm very fortunate, and I think kind of like you asked me at the beginning. I think for young coaches, the biggest thing is just kind of go your own route. I think a lot of guys will tell you, hey, you got to go this route, be this, be a dobo, be an assistant, and go this way. But for me, my situation was a little different, and I went junior college, and some people will tell you that's a death sentence, and other people will tell you it's the best thing you could do. So I think you just got to go your own route and figure out the way you want to get to where you want to go, and the right things will happen. But then to Eagles fans, I mean, I'm fired up, and I've told a lot of them that as I've seen them. I think we're excited, kind of to get things rolling. The summer has been it's crazy because usually I want summer to go slow and
Right.
enjoy it, and right now I'm kind of hoping it flies by because I'm trying to get on the court with the guys and try to get in some of those team meetings and just get to know the guys even more. But I'm fired up. I think it's going to be a process. I talk about that all the time, but I'm excited for what we have to come, and I'm excited for where we can go. And I appreciate you for having me on here. I've followed you from afar a lot of times, and know all the things you do for D3 hoops, and I think that's huge. And I think you having that platform for Division III basketball is huge. And anytime you want me on, or anytime you want to talk basketball or hoops, just let me know.
Oh, we will do this when things start rolling. I know that you guys are
Yep.
going to be playing some tough non-conference games early, and then you're going to get into the WIAC. And look forward to talking and doing another version of this when we have X's and O's and results to discuss. So, congratulations, best of luck to you this summer as you kind of get things organized for the kids coming back to campus, folks. That is QCast Season 3, Episode 38. JT Gritzmacher of La Crosse. JT, thanks so much, and we will talk soon, my friend.
I appreciate it, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks.